I never imagined that moving into Oak Ridge Estates would turn me into an amateur detective. But that's exactly what happened, thanks to Karen Wilkins. As president of our HOA, Karen ran the neighborhood like her own personal kingdom. From the moment I moved in, she watched me through her window blinds like a hawk, clipboard in hand, always on alert. My house was nearly perfect, except for one thing. The previous owners had installed a gorgeous in-ground pool. For me, it became a peaceful escape after long days of the engineering firm. Every evening, I'd come home, change into swim trunks, and unwind with a quiet swim. That routine didn't sit well with Karen. The first sign of trouble came as a notice taped to my front door. It claimed my pool maintenance didn't meet community standards. I was confused. The water was clear. The chemicals were balanced. I tested them twice a week. The landscaping was neat and well-maintained. I called the number on the notice, and of course, Karen answered. Her voice was sugary sweet, but her tone was smug. "Hello, Mr. Harrison. I'm just doing my duty as HOA president to ensure our neighborhood maintains its property values," she said. "Several neighbors have complained about your pool. The water appears cloudy from the street." I invited her to come inspect it herself, thinking she'd see it was fine. That was a mistake. It gave her an excuse to nitpick everything in my backyard. She strutted around in a beige pantsuit, clicking her pen and making notes like she was preparing for trial. "Your patio furniture isn't within the approved color palette," she said, gesturing to my perfectly normal navy blue loungers. "And those plants, not on the approved landscaping list. You'll need to submit Form 37B for a variance." I tried to be reasonable. "Karen, I've read the bylaws. There's nothing in there about furniture colors. These plants are native to the region and drought-resistant." Her eyes narrowed. She tapped her clipboard like a judge passing sentence. "I know the bylaws better than anyone, Mr. Harrison. You'll receive formal notices by tomorrow." She spun around and marched off, leaving me standing there in my suddenly non-compliant backyard. Sure enough, the next day I found 3 separate violation notices in my mailbox, each one threatening fines if I didn't comply within a week. I spent that entire weekend buried in paperwork, applying for variances I shouldn't have needed in the first place. I went along with it, hoping that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next month, Karen found a new violation every week. According to her, my mailbox was 2 inches too tall. My garbage bins were visible for 15 minutes too long on trash day. She even called my American flag an excessive patriotic display. That's when I started documenting everything. Photos, notes, time-stamped records of our interactions. Something told me I'd need proof someday. Then came the pool party. I invited a few co-workers over for a Saturday afternoon barbecue. Just 6 adults, burgers on the grill, music at a reasonable volume. It was calm and friendly, nothing wild. At around 4 p.m., Karen showed up at the edge of my property, phone in hand. "This is a violation of the noise ordinance and the guest parking policy," she shouted loud enough for my guests to hear. She began snapping photos of their cars parked neatly along the curb. "The bylaws clearly state that gatherings of more than 4 guests require prior approval." My friends exchanged awkward glances. I forced a smile, but inside I knew this wasn't just about the pool or the bylaws. This was personal, and I was going to need a plan. I tried to stay calm, even as anger and embarrassment boiled just beneath the surface. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice even, "there's no such provision in the bylaws. I've read them, every single page. We're not breaking any noise rules, and we're literally just having a conversation." She gave me a smug little smile. "I've already called for an emergency HOA board meeting to discuss your continued violations," she said. "Expect significant fines." Then, as if she couldn't help herself, she added, "Oh, and your pool still isn't up to standards. Your chlorine levels are probably all wrong." She turned and walked off, leaving my guests quietly exchanging glances. The party died down soon after. Most of them left early, clearly uncomfortable with what had just happened. Later that evening, after the house was quiet, I reviewed the footage from my backyard security cameras. Something I'd started doing after the 3rd bogus violation notice. What I saw made my stomach drop. While I'd been inside grabbing drinks, Karen had walked up to the pool, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and pulled a small container from her purse. She dumped the contents into the water before slipping it back into her bag and walking away like nothing had happened. I ran outside and immediately tested the pool. The pH levels were off the charts. Something was seriously wrong, and my test kit couldn't identify the substance. I collected a sample in a sterile container and called an emergency pool service. Their results confirmed it. Someone had poured industrial-strength alkaline cleaner into the pool, enough to cause skin irritation or even chemical burns if anyone had gone swimming. I barely slept that night. I kept thinking, what if someone had gone back in the water? What if there had been kids? The next morning, I took the water sample, test results, and security footage to the police. Officer Rodriguez, the one who took my statement, watched the footage in silence. "This isn't a neighborhood dispute anymore, Mr. Harrison," he said. "Serious now. This is criminal. Vandalism, trespassing, and potentially assault, depending on what the lab confirms." He asked for a formal statement and said they'd be following up with Karen. "There's more," I told him, pulling out the folder where I'd been documenting everything. Photos, violation notices, recordings, timestamps. He flipped through it with growing concern and nodded. "You've done your homework." 2 days later, I was trimming hedges in the front yard when a police cruiser pulled up to Karen's house. I kept my head down, pretending to focus, but watched from the corner of my eye. Officer Rodriguez and another officer, a woman, approached her door. After a short exchange, I heard Karen's voice rise, sharp, angry. She was waving her arms, protesting loudly about her authority as HOA president. It escalated quickly. She tried to shut the door on them. Officer Rodriguez blocked it with his foot. When she attempted to bolt toward her car, the officer stopped her, handcuffed her, and read her rights. Neighbors peeked through curtains and over fences, watching the spectacle unfold. As the officers led her to the squad car, she caught sight of me and shouted, her face red and twisted with fury. "This is your fault. I was protecting property values. You're destroying this neighborhood with your noncompliance." Officer Rodriguez gently guided her into the back seat as she kept ranting. I didn't feel satisfaction, just relief. Maybe now it would finally stop. That evening, the HOA vice president called. Karen had been formally charged with trespassing, vandalism, and reckless endangerment. The board had held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove her as president, effective immediately. But that wasn't the end of it. The local news picked up the story. Turns out, Karen had a history of harassment in other neighborhoods, but her previous HOA boards had quietly handled it, allowing her to move and repeat the cycle. This time, the charges stuck. Everything became part of the public record. 3 weeks later, I received a letter from the court. Karen had accepted a plea deal. 6-month probation, community service, restitution for damages, including nearly $2,000 for the pool cleaning, and a restraining order barring her from coming within 100 feet of my property. The final blow came when she was called before the State Real Estate Licensing Board. Karen, a real estate agent specializing in upscale communities, had to account for her behavior under oath. I sat quietly in the back of the hearing room. When they announced a decision to suspend her license for a full year, she didn't say a word. She turned, spotted me in the audience, and for the first time since I'd met her, Karen Wilkins had nothing to say.